folks, Happy New Year, hope you had a good Christmas. I'm going to finish off the Love and Marriage prescription for EDUQAS, for the Love and Marriage unit. I apologise that I can't move the thumbnail of where my recording is. So have your text in front of you. I'm trying to get these out quickly so they're out in time, maybe for you to look at before your mock exams. If not, hopefully they'll be helpful for you for your summer exams. So today we're going to pick back up with poetry. We're going to have a look at Horace and his ode Finished with Love. Now, Horace is actually one of the Latin poets who fought in the military. So after the assassination of Julius Caesar, he fights against Mark Antony and Octavian with Brutus. And this becomes important because he uses a lot of military imagery in this poem. So knowing that little tidbit about him can be really helpful when we start to think about how he describes love. So as ever, we're going to look at the Latin and the English, and then we'll have a little look at the effects that you can mention in an exam. So, vixi puellis nuper idonius, et militavi non sine gloria, nunc arma defunctumque bello, barbiton hic paries habebit. So, if we have a look, there's quite a bit of vocab that you know from the language paper. So puellis, girls, and here it's dative case, two girls. So you're used to seeing puella, here it's puellis in the dative. Militavi, I fought, and here, look, it's military, so it's fighting in a war, as opposed to pugnare, which is to fight like a personal fight. Non sine, not without, gloria, distinction, glory would be fine. Nunc, now. Arma, weapons. Defunctum, so this means finished. We have the word defunct in English, even if you don't know that from the language paper. Bello is with war, so from bellum, bella, but it's in the ablative case. And habebit, you will have. Plenty of words you know from the language paper. Laevum marinae qui veneris latus custodit. Hic ponite lucida. Funalia et vectes et arcus oppositis foribus minaces. Okay, so if we look first stuff you know from the language paper, protects is custodit. You might translate that as guards. Hic, normally we see that complementing a word meaning this, but in the poem it means here. So it's kind of like saying in this place. Ponite is like placed. Ponere is usually to place, and here they've translated it as lay. What else do we know? Arcus, meaning like the bow, like an arc. Oppositis is to threaten, just like opposition. So plenty of things really that you do know, either from English root words or from the language paper itself. Last bit. O quae beatum diva tenes Cyprum, et Memphin carentem Sidonia nive. Regina, sublimi flagello, tange cloen semel arrogantem. So, the word order is a bit weird. O goddess, O ... diva, or diva. Tenes is you keep, so here they've put dwell. In Cyprum, Cyprus. What else will we know? Nive is snow, so it comes from nix. Nive is snow. Regina, queen, you know that from the language paper. Tange, or tange, would be like to touch from tangere, and here they've translated it as to strike. The reason the dance, a tango, is called a tango is because the two dancers have to touch the whole way through the dance. It's a bit of a weird root word. So, the metre that Horace is working in, if you had to look at this poem for a style question, is archaic metre. Now, you're not going to be asked specific questions on metre really in a GCSE paper. You would be in an A-level OCR paper, but knowing a little bit about the metre can help give your score a boost without having to get too bogged down in it. So the archaic metre that Horace is using is kind of an homage to the Greek poet Alcaeus. And you've got a picture of him on the board just here. So on the vase in front of you, you can see Alcaeus is on the left, and he's joined by the Greek poet Sappho on the right, and she's there as well, very famous female Greek poet. Both of them write in lyric. And this is a meter that's very musical and is called lyric because it is accompanied by the lyre that you can see Alcaeus holding there. So it's quite melodic. And really, when we say archaic meter, this is Horace kind of paying homage to Alcaeus. So he's got quite a soft melodic poem, but the things he's saying aren't necessarily very soft. There could be a bit of a contrast between what he says and the way that he says it. So let's have a little look at some of the specific features we could pick out if we were looking at style. So the way he begins the poem with Vixi, like in my life, goodbye, it parodies an epitaph. So in the translation we had goodbye, but it's more than that. It's a very final, very ultimate goodbye. And that's why it's parodying like Roman epitaphs, the sort of thing you would see on a tombstone. When he talks about himself having been attractive to girls, he uses the term idoneous, or the description, the adjective idoneous. And this comes at the end of the line, which gives it a little bit more emphasis. The word choice is quite unusual in that we might expect pulcher as handsome. And that's not just to fit the meter, it's also, this is like the Latin word for fit. So it's the idea of being physically attractive or handsome, but also physically fit and capable, which, given that he's talking about being in the military and he's talking about things from a soldier's point of view, is perhaps more suitable to this kind of double meaning, this play between love and war, being attractive and being physically fit and capable. And idoneous captures that really well. Please don't translate it as fit in your exam. Militavi, so we have the military imagery for I4. He doesn't say pugnavi, he says militavi because he's drawing on love as war, love as a battlefield sort of thing. We have litotes, non sine, not without. So he's being a little bit like a little bit smug and self-effacing, like, oh no, wasn't unsuccessful with the ladies. All right, Horace. We also have in closing order on arma and bello, so weapons and war. It's making it a really pervasive theme across the poem. Barbiton is the word for a lyre, and we've talked about the lyric meter before. So this is where form, the lyric meter, meets content. He's talking about the lyre as though it is a weapon. So he's saying that both arma, his weapons, presumably like his charms, and his barbiton, his lyre, are now discarded. So he's drawing this kind of parallel between the ways he would seduce women himself, but also the ways he would seduce them by playing them the lyre. Apparently that worked, who knew? If we have a look towards the end, we start to see hyperbaton, or hyperbaton, sorry, weird pronunciation from me. So you've got livum, left, latus, side, and they're kind of spread apart. So there's a couple of things going on here. Hyperbaton is really when you make word order more peculiar and unusual to kind of focus on the point. Like if you're not using a very regular word order, it forces people to slow down and really, really listen to what you're saying. So it can be quite emphatic. But livum and latus, left and side, also mirror the walls that he's talking about, because he's talking about the parias, the walls protecting from either side. We've got chiasmus as well with the cases. So chiasmus is A, B, B, A structure, okay? And we don't necessarily have that just with the types of words here, but we have that with a little bit with the cases. So we have accusative, livum, genitive, marinae, genitive, veneris, and accusative again with latus, okay? So there's quite a bit going on here, but it's mirroring the walls, bracketing and protecting. So a bit of a weird word order. Okay. Custodit, protects, and that's on the next line, so that's run over. Okay. Hic, hic, we have repetition, so it's really emphatic. Here, here. We also have polysyndeton in the second line there. Funalia et vectes et arcus. So we've got lots of connectives. So the cinder bit, you might have heard in English literature of syndetic listing and asyndetic listing. So that's listing with and listing without and. Here, et in Latin means both this and that. So the polysyndeton is really kind of emphasising the number of things that are at play. There is a really weird effect here that I'll talk about a little bit more in a moment because I don't want us to get too distracted. But where he says oppositis foribus minaces, the idea of being at a locked door is a really familiar theme from Greek poetry. So the locked out lover is a whole kind of subgenre of Greek poetry called a paraklausitharon. Now, don't get too excited about it in that EDUQAS don't really mention this or talk about it, but it's something that Greek poets like Theocritus used to use quite a bit, and it's probably something that Horace, as an educated Roman, is drawing on a little bit here. A paraklausitharon is a fancy Greek way of saying a love song sung at a door. And it's kind of a bit of a stranger danger situation where the lover is at his beloved's door and he's singing to her. Okay. The last bit is tricky in a different way. So when we have Memphis and Stylia, and we've got the neve, the snow of Stylia, we've got hot and cold. So we've got imagery that talks about geography. Latin poets quite like geography, they're quite into it, really because the empire's getting quite big. So it gives them lots of poetic ways to say fairly simple things, but also focus on the spread of the empire. And that's why you'll get a lot of place names sometimes coming up in Roman poetry and Latin poetry. We have a respect marker when he's speaking to Venus and he calls her regina, he calls her queen. We have endline emphasis on the whip flagello or flagello, depending on how Italian you want to be. So we get a bit of endline emphasis there. So there's a few effects, but there's also a couple of different themes. So he talks about his lover being hot and cold. Now we know this sort of theme. You've probably seen it or heard it in pop music before. Bit of an out-of-date reference, but it's the one that came to my mind. The idea of unrequited love is a theme that you could talk about when you're talking about Horace. Also, the idea of the paraklausitharon, the lover at the door. Again, it's a dated reference, but we are just after Christmas. You might know this one. What both of them hint at is that love can be painful, love can be unrequited, and feeling frustrated about love and pursuit is a common theme that we see in poetry. And notice that all of this is very, very separate from marriage, which is arranged for the wealthy Romans, which is based on like basically family partnerships, improving public life by having wealthy families join together. So love and marriage are not one and the same in Rome the way that we perhaps would like them to be. Okay, so I hope that was helpful for you. Please re-watch the video, pause it, have a look at any style questions your teachers have given you as you go with these videos. If you are just watching them and you are not writing anything, you're not annotating at a minimum, or you're not doing essay questions, they're not going to be that memorable and that helpful. You need to be active while you're watching them, guys. Okay. I'll link any useful resources I can find in the description below. I hope you have a really productive mock exam period, even if it is a bit painful. And I'll bring some more videos out soon. Okay, thanks.